Now then, Vinyl Monkey here after a long hiatus or gap, I don't know. Yeah, apologies for that. Just, yeah, life getting in the way of making these videos recently, but hopefully I'll get back on track. So this is the first one I've done since my since I ranked my Groundhogs albums, and this one, well, what can you say about this band? I'm going to say very little because it's all been said. What I'm doing here is trying to rank Led Zeppelin's studio albums. They had about a 10-year life, Led Zeppelin, from 1969 to 79 or so, when drummer John Bonham died, and the band subsequently split up. I mean, there was subsequently to that there was a sort of compilation stuff, and there's been one or two live albums, but I'm going to try and rank, in my humble opinion, their 8 studio albums that they made in that period, 1969 to 79. And yeah, what a band. I mean, they were they sort of grew out, I suppose, of the breakup of the Yardbirds originally. Well, I think they formed in sort of two halves. They were formed by Jimmy Page, who started to pull people together after the breakup of the Yardbirds, 1968 or so, 68, 69. And he was looking for a singer, and originally he was going to go for a guy called Terry Reid, who sort of turned it down but recommended Robert Plant. And then Robert Plant wanted to bring his mate in, who he'd played with in, was it Band of Joy? I've forgotten. Playing in a sort of Birmingham band, John Bonham. And John Paul Jones was a session sort of musician, very musical, bass, keyboards. Was known to Jimmy Page, and he eventually got the gig. So, you know, it's one of those bands I'll never forget the names of the members. Jimmy Page on lead guitar wrote most of the music. Robert Plant on lyrics, on vocals, who wrote nearly all the lyrics. John Paul Jones on bass and keyboards, and the irrepressible John Bonham on the most primal, prehistoric, crunching, driving rock drums that had ever been heard, and I think really drove, along with Jimmy Page's riffs, it's Bonham's driving, sort of pounding drumming, I think, which really made the band so distinctive, like nothing that had come before it, I think. And yeah, what an outstanding band. So I'm going to have a go at ranking the albums, and so there were 8 of them in total, as I said, and starting at number 8, this is 1979's, their last album, In Through the Outdoor. It actually came in a sort of cardboard, in a sort of brown paper bag, and then a cover which had about half a dozen variations on it, slight variations. I don't know whether they were open that collectors might buy all 6 variated covers, but this is In Through the Outdoor, and I mean, none of these are bad albums. I've got to preface what I'm going to say by that. They're all good albums, but I think by their own standards, by their own extremely high standards, this really did signify the end of the road. I think by the time this was being prepared and produced, Jimmy Page was pretty badly screwed on heroin. John Bonham was really badly screwed on drink. Plant had his all sorts of problems, his previous sort of accidents, and death of a child as well. Yeah, so the band is sort of dominated like none of the others, maybe by Jones's keyboards, and it's, as I say, it's not a terrible album. There are 3 or 4 songs that are pretty okay. The opener, In the Evening, All My Love, the closing blues, I'm Gonna Crawl, quite nice tracks. And it's sort of, I don't know, perhaps to its credit, it's trying to do something different. There's a bit of a different sort of vibe and sound to it. But I think it's their weakest LP. That's In Through the Outdoor, 1979. My number 7, and now this is often called by the critics a masterpiece, and I don't know if you disagree with my ranking, have a go in the comments, have a say, put your case, but I've got at number 7 Physical Graffiti. Great cover, but this is a double album from 1975, and I think it suffers in the way that quite a few double albums do, really. It would have been a great single album, I think, if they'd done some more judicious editing, but I think it's got 4 brilliant tracks, great tracks. The epic Kashmir, sort of great singing and vocals on Trampled Underfoot, the hard rocking Houses of the Holy, and the Wanton song, great stuff. But there is I think some sort of filler in here, some pretty poor stuff, and it's a pretty uneven album for me. As I say, it would have been one of those albums that I think would have been a classic, no doubt, if it had been a single album. Though many people do rate it as a real masterpiece. That's Physical Graffiti from 1975, my number 7 Zeppelin album. My number 6. This is from 1976. This is Presence. This has been called Led Zeppelin's heavy metal album, and this one was dominated by. This was after Plant's accident, and I think he was I don't know whether he was wheelchair bound, but he was incapacitated, and he wasn't at all the sort of sessions that developed this album, and it was dominated by Jimmy Page and his guitar, and it starts with a brilliant sort of tight riff of Achilles' Last Stand, and it ends with a great slow blues, T for One. But in between, there's some canny stuff, some heavy stuff, but it's a bit more heavy metal, poppy. I don't know, perhaps the least Led Zeppelin sounding Led Zeppelin album, maybe. I've got it as my number 6. That's Presence from 1976. My number 5 is Houses of the Holy, with its controversial gatefold cover. This is from 1973. This one starts with absolutely cracking the three opening tracks are just bam, 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 absolutely cracking stuff. The song remains the same, a brilliant intro, sort of lovely bass, and I think it's a track which brings out the best of these of these 4 brilliant individuals. And then Rain's Song with its beautiful strings and its sort of Plant's plaintive vocal wailing, and then Over the Hills and Far Away with its great acoustic intro and its driving Zepp rhythm and riffs. But then I think this album does start to slip a bit, and I think by side two is a lot weaker for me. It's a bit of one of those albums that's a bit of a game of two halves for me, but some brilliant stuff on there. So I've got it as my number 5, Houses of the Holy from 1973. My number 4 is Led Zeppelin III from 1970. Again, brilliant cover with its circular sort of insert there, great stuff. And this was a very different Zeppelin album after the sort of hard blues rocking, hard though subtle. I've got to say about Zeppelin, one of the things about Zeppelin, I mean, they clearly drew on the blues, but they made a sound totally distinctive, and based on the talents of the individual talents of the band members. So absolutely dominated by brilliant riffs by Jimmy Page. Somebody once said that if you look at the 20 greatest guitar riffs in rock and roll, Jimmy Page wrote about 15 of them. I don't know whether that's fair comment or not, but it's indicative of the dominance of that brilliant guitar riff style, and then this pounding rhythm, led by John Bonham with John Paul Jones, that drives these things along, and then Robert Plant's distinctive, very, very distinctive, high-pitched rock voice, and I mean the lyrics. I don't think there was ever anything special about Zeppelin's lyrics. Some of them, if you look too closely at them, are pretty. I don't know. They're pretty poor in my view. Really, they're pretty thin. But it's not the lyrics. It's the sound that they produce, and they're just one of those bands with four brilliant individuals, but collectively much greater than some of the parts. And but for those of us who, when I first come across Zeppelin in 1970, I think I was 12, 13 years old, and I heard an older friend's Led Zeppelin II was the first one I heard, and I was just absolutely blown away. I'd never heard anything like it. I just thought, goodness me, they were peerless in my view at that time. There was absolutely nobody could make a sound like Led Zeppelin. And 3 came as a little bit of a shock. It's more acoustic, it's more subtle, it's more varied. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. There's some great songs on here, and it's a good piece of work. It is a work of art. It's a good album, a classic album. It starts with the brilliant Zepp-style rocker Immigrant song. I often wondered why it was so short. It's only 2.5 minutes or something. It feels like it should have been at least twice the length to me. But overall, I've got this as number 4 in my list, and probably the reason I play it less than the other Zepp albums probably, and I don't know, it's the high pitches on the guitar and the vocals and the sort of folky, sort of high pitched sound that just puts me off a little bit personally. But it is a cracking classic album. It's my number 4, Led Zeppelin III from 1970. My number 3 was Led Zeppelin's debut album, which I didn't hear until after I'd heard Led Zeppelin I. But this is Led Zeppelin I, came out in 1969, and wow, yeah, just absolutely. I mean, Good Times, Bad Times, Dazed and Confused, Communication Breakdown, absolutely Zeppelin classics. They just laid it down there. They came out as a fully formed, mature, outstanding and original, unique rock band, and it's 1969. It stands up today as strong as ever, and that's my number 3, Led Zeppelin I. Now, numbers 2 and 1, really you couldn't get a fag paper between. I've gone through my usual methodology in terms of trying to determine my favourites, not just instinct. So I've re-listened to every song. I've given them a score. I've tried to be even-handed with them, and it was something like 0.05 of a point that separated these two albums. And I suppose if I did the exercise tomorrow, it might be the other way around. I don't know. But at number 2, I've got 1971's Led Zeppelin IV, or the Four Symbols album, where each of the band members, I think, chose or were involved in designing a symbol, but everybody knows it as Led Zeppelin IV. Just brilliant, beginning to end. It's like all the other Zeppelin stuff. It's got its subtleties. It's got its shades of hard rock to English folk. Sometimes all in one song, like the ubiquitous Stairway to Heaven, which I suppose I, like many other people, find that difficult to listen to these days. It's become such a cliche, which isn't anything to do with Led Zeppelin's fault. It's just been used and played that much. But this is it's just an absolutely stunning, brilliant album. Led Zeppelin IV, I have it as my number 2. And very, very close run thing, but my number 1, the only one left from their 8 albums. The first one I ever heard, actually, Led Zeppelin II. Again, great cover. And yeah, from the opening track, Whole Lot of Love, which you could say that's been overplayed and overused, and I bought it into by all sorts of different groups, from Herb Albert to whoever, CCS, didn't they, on the Top of the Pops and all the rest of it. But it still moves me every time I hear that, and that drum roll that leads into Plant's voice halfway through the track, and Page's sort of guitar that sounds like racing cars revving up. But it's just absolutely unique, and as an opening track it just blows. I think it blew me away. But from that track to the closing track, the brilliant blues, Bring It On Home, I just think this is perfect, really. It demonstrates all of that subtlety and shade that I'm talking about, sort of between hard rock, blues rock, pop rock, folk rock. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I even love, still to this day, the drum solo song Moby Dick. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's just because I heard this one first. But this epitomises Zeppelin at their most perfect. It's my number 1. It's Led Zeppelin II from 1970. So, comments welcome. I think people might have a go at me for sort of underrating some of their later albums, but that's fair enough. It's only my personal opinion. So thanks for watching, and I hope to make some more videos soon. Cheers, bye.